Thank you for allowing me to do this presentation. Today I'll be presenting my instructional plan for EDU 500, and my name is Capricia Riley. So first I wanted to talk about the issues you see in an online classroom, and also sometimes they come up in brick and mortar as well. But first is motivating students. If you want to read exactly why it's important, I wrote it down here for you. But I can just quickly explain it. Students with higher levels of motivation do better in class. So we want to make sure they're motivated. To do this, I'll be providing my students with a reward system this semester. I actually had a chance to share with them today, and we'll be doing a scholars hangout each Friday for any student who completes all of their assignments throughout the week. This plays on extrinsic and intrinsic motivation because they have a desire to hang out with other students, and it gives them a chance to do just that. Next is higher order thinking. So students should be able to do more than just regurgitate facts back to us. They should be able to understand what's going on. Think, for instance, when I was growing up, I couldn't tell you why 3 times 2 is 6. I just had to memorize the facts. Now my third graders, they can tell you that 3 times 2 is 6 because they made 3 groups and put 2 in each group. Or that 3 times 2 is 6 because they skip counted by 2 3 times. Or that they did 3 plus 3. They should be able to truly have a depth of knowledge on each topic that we cover. So in order to establish this in my students, I'll be using Webb's depth of knowledge and Bloom's taxonomy when creating questions for my students. The last issue I want to discuss is educating the whole child. So in the classroom, sometimes we get really caught up in the academic feature of education when we need to learn for social and emotional reasons as well. And it's proven that students with higher social and emotional levels of intelligence actually do better academically. So to do this, I will work to develop relationships with my students and their parents. So I'm going to provide those scholar hangouts. I'm going to do biweekly phone calls, and I'm even going to do monthly check-ins with my students. And then I want to work to help students develop relationships with each other. So allowing chat box privileges for early finishers and even people who arrive early to class, student collaboration on academic work, and classroom discussion. So throughout the readings for this course, there was the impact of the science of learning. And it impacted reading because it talked about phonological awareness, so being able to understand sounds, decode words, blend them together. Next was writing, so the planning process. You have to be able to organize your thoughts to put them on paper. And lastly, in math, students have to be able to understand how to manipulate things in their mind, such as a number line, to be able to add on, take away, multiply, divide, and so forth. So for the educational theories that I'll be using, first is behaviorism. And this theory states that learning is achieved through trial and error and measured in observable relationships. He explains that their own person's view of their behavior is invalid. It must be measurable and observable by a third party. Some educational implications for this would continue to do progress monitoring because that's something that's measurable and can be seen by a third party. Providing students with detailed feedback to see how they respond to it, and then also giving them a rubric so they know how they're going to be assessed prior to the assignment being due. Another theory is cognitivism, and this theory claims that learning involves the use of memory, motivation, and thinking. It also states that reflection plays an important role in learning due to being an internal process. So some educational implications include chunky material, so don't just lay everything out in one big glob. You want to organize it into these units so kids can truly understand everything and put them into the different sectors of their memory. Then we have constructivism. Constructivism explains that students learn by linking ideas together and they're not just passive recipients. So something I want to do in class to help with constructivism is accessing their prior knowledge. So for instance, with multiplication, let's go back to that example with 3 times 2. I would put on the board 2 plus 2 plus 2 because my students in third grade should be able to do that. And so they can link that idea with multiplication. And then also, there must be a high level of interaction in the classroom so the students have a chance to make more links to information. Another theory is humanism, which seeks to help learners attain the highest goals possible by promoting respect for human dignity. This theory attempts to cultivate the learner for society's good. Some implications for teachers is that we need to be role models. We need to be caring, trusting, empathetic, and have a positive disposition for our students. And we also need to have respect for them and know that they are the drivers of their learning process. So I also found some theories that aren't directly related to education but are super important in my opinion for teachers to know. So we have developmental theories first. Stages of cognitive development. This theory was proposed by Piaget and explains that humans go through four stages as they become adults. And as each stage progresses, they become from more concrete to more abstract understanding. And then the next theory I came up with was psychosocial development, which is Erikson's theory. And he explains that there are various stages humans go through as they mature, and they have to overcome different scenarios or issues in life. Both of these together give some educational implications for a teacher. We have to know where our students are, not just mentally, but socially as well. We have to know where they are so we can meet them there. We can't give them information that's too abstract when they're pure concrete thinkers. We can't expect them to trust us if they haven't passed that psychosocial stage yet. So, this is really important for us to be able to teach our students and truly make relationships with them. Some more non educational theories that matter for the classroom go along with the theory of behaviorism that I mentioned earlier by Watson. But here I pulled out Pavlov's classical conditioning and Skinner's operative conditioning. So, classical conditioning is when a conditioned response is paired with a neutral stimulus. And then operative conditioning is when you give a specific or specific behavior for a reinforcement. So the educational implications for this would be the frequent progress monitoring, the standardized testing, classroom routines and procedures, and also rewards and a punishment system is really important for Skinners. You want students to have a punishment so they don't want to do a behavior again. Lastly, is a social theory that I came up with, was able to find, and this is the critical theory of love. And this was actually my first time seeing this theory, and I fell in love with it, honestly. This theory explains that love plays a huge role in the classroom, and it states that love must meet the demands of justice, be based in minority lived experiences, and account for the whole person. Educational implications of this include that we need to do culturally responsive teaching. Culturally relevant pedagogy is vital for teachers to study, and also implementing social and emotional teaching practices in our classroom. So, my research question is, to what extent can online teachers increase the engagement of their students to support academic learning through responsive teaching strategies? And the way I'm going to observe this is first semester, I had a baby. So I was out for 8 weeks. And then when I came back, I eased my way back in. So I honestly didn't do a lot of responsive teaching. In fact, I only averaged 1.5 to 2 hours a week. But this semester, I've already created my schedule and I'll be averaging 4 to 5 hours a week of responsive teaching. My students will have one on ones, they will have small groups, and even time just for live help to pop in and ask a question, kind of like office hours. This will give me more responsive teaching and more interaction with my students. And it also will give me a chance to get to know them better and chances just to talk to them to do that. So I will see what comparing semester grades if this responsive teaching did increase my student engagement and my student success. So in order to address the first issue, I'll be using the behaviorism theory to motivate my students. I want to be able to provide my students with a student contract, so this will increase their student autonomy. We're actually working on this Friday. And what we're going to do as a class is create our expectations, what they need from me, what I need from them, and how we're going to do it. We're implementing a reward system. And again, increasing the awareness of student autonomy. The students need to know that they are drivers of their education, that I can't shove the information into their head and make it stay there. They have to play an active part. I chose behaviorism because with behaviorism, we can work to invoke motivation in our students by providing intrinsic and extrinsic motivation sources. By inducing motivation in our students, we are more likely to change their behavior and increase academic outcomes. The next issue, again, is supporting higher order thinking. To do this, I'll be using constructivism and those developmental theories we talked about. So I'm doing this because constructivism states that we construct our knowledge by linking new information to what we already know. We must understand where a student is developmentally to be able to provide them with instruction that they can truly comprehend. So as I mentioned earlier, I will be using Bloom's taxonomy and the DOK levels to do this, so be able to better scaffold for my students and help them understand the information. The last issue is educating the whole child, and I'm using that critical theory of love that I brought up earlier, humanism and sociocultural teaching. So by addressing the student as a whole person and not just as a person receiving information, we give them a greater sense of belonging in the classroom, which also increases our relationship and bond with them and the amount of loyalty they feel to a teacher, the way they want to make you proud. So back to what's on the slide. Teachers are to help create environments, curriculum, and instructional methods that validate and reflect the diversity, identities, and experience of not just one, but all of their students. And to do this, I will be looking into culturally responsive teaching. So as I get to know my students better, I'll know the things that make them unique, the things that make them different, and I can include that in class. Whether it's just, say, for instance, I have a student who really, really, truly loves hunting. I've never been. So maybe I can include some word problems that include hunting in it just to spark their interest, just small differences I can make. Ways to leverage technology. I want to first talk about these online resources over here. There's this really cool student-centered interactive image called a thing link, and you can put different links onto a image, and students can click through the links at their own um, preference in the sense that they can click whichever link they want first. And it's kind of like a scavenger hunt, but they can venture through the whole lesson. So I'm excited to send something like that out for maybe a history lesson. Quizzy so students can have friendly competition with each other, and also using those Blackboard Connect breakout rooms to be able to have more one-on-ones, small groups, things of that sort. I'll be using consistent communication with my students, bi-weekly phone calls, monthly virtual meetings, daily use of webcam and microphones, and also virtual social sessions once a week. This is so I can decrease the perceived transactional distance between me and my students so that way they can feel a closeness to me. I also want to decrease this transactional distance between me and the parents as well. And then one of the reading lessons I got from this course taught me about the backward design framework. So first I'd be identifying my desired results. So I want to increase student attendance in whole group and small group instruction. I also want to increase student participation in whole group and small group. And I want to increase student stride quiz participation and increase student stride quiz and summit lesson passing rates. So I truly believe that if I can increase their participation and engagement in everything, I will be able to get those passing rates. So if those are my desired results, I want to determine the acceptable evidence next. High rates of attendance would be something that I could look at. Observable evidence that my students are participating. See how many are raising their hands, who's talking, who's paying attention when I call on them randomly. And the increase in completed assignments will lead to the passing rates. And then I need to plan out my experiences and instruction. What skills do I want to teach for a student? What activities are needed? What materials? Those are things I will go step by step in my lesson planning after identifying steps 1 and 2. Next is to differentiate the lessons. It's very important to differentiate lessons because students are all very different. No one student is the same. So I would be scaffolding, which is additional prompting for struggling students, which is metacognitive scaffolding. I will teach multiple strategies. So back to that multiplication example of 3 times 2. They could skip count. They could memorize it, which is not suggested. They could draw a picture. They can use an array. That's strategic scaffolding. And then consistent routines and questions is procedural scaffolding. So they get in the habit of it, such as knowing their vocabulary words, reading them every day, having to write them out. And then responsive teaching, one-on-one, small groups, stride time. Stride is an interactive platform that actually goes up and down in rigor, debating on the students' answers. And then also raise your grade sessions for students who may have failed a quiz and need to redo it with me to provide more guidance. Next, as I mentioned, it's so important to address the whole child in the classroom. So we'll be doing social and emotional learning, and that is the process through which we learn to recognize and manage emotions, care about others, make good decisions, behave ethically and responsibly, develop positive relationships, and avoid negative behaviors. The benefits of this include helping children become healthier and happier people, help children become active and engaged citizens, including in the classroom, and some educational implications is that if a student has higher social emotional learning, they're interacting with people more often. So they're going to gain some problem solving skills. This improves the classroom climate because they're making friends with each other. It decreases unwanted classroom behavior, heightens the sense of belonging in the classroom, and it tells the teacher to be caring, empathetic, and also respect the students as a driver of their success. Next is teaching diverse learners. This can be done through culturally relevant pedagogy. Culturally relevant pedagogy is when the teacher shows that they are culturally competent. The benefits are show that they create a student's higher belonging in the classroom. Cultural proficiency also acknowledges the value of the culture of these different from oneself and allows students to feel that they have a place in the classroom. Here are my resources, which also can be found in my annotated bibliography. Thank you.